Hello, good people. If you are watching this video, then you are one of a group of people that I would like to call friends. The circumstances by which we met could vary. You might be someone I met through work or through some social interaction. You could be young or old, you could be male or female. That part might change, but the one thing that's in common is at some point we had a conversation, and that conversation, I would like to believe, is different than a lot of conversations. Most times when we communicate with people today, it's very chit chat, surface kind of conversation, talk about, things that aren't really that important. And I would like to believe that the conversation that we had was a little bit more profound. It was about things that are really important. I guess the way to explain it, I think of this commercial that was on TV a couple of years ago. Had the picture of this guy. He's on like one of those riding mowers outside his house, and he's got like this giant house, and he's riding around mowing the lawn, and it says, "There's Jim. He's got a big house. He's got a new car. Look at that pool. Look at all he has." And then they pan in on the guy Jim, and they're like, "How do you do it?" And he says, "I'm in debt up to my eyeballs." And the idea is that I believe that our modern society is into creating this big facade where people pretend that they have their stuff together, and really it's all a big act. And it's super difficult to really have your act together today. But we've gotten really good at pretending. And it looks to everyone else like everyone else is really pulling it off and that we're the only ones struggling. Well, as a result of the things that I've been through in my life, I've decided to be one of the people who goes out and tries to tell people, hey, I'm struggling. I find life to be difficult. I find living up to expectations to be difficult. And what happens is when I share that with other people, it's amazing. Like, almost without exception, ever, I've never had anyone disagree. People say, "Oh my God, you're so right. I feel the same way." I've literally had grown men cry, like their eyes fill up, and they say things like, "I thought I was the only one that felt this way. I didn't realize that this is so common." And I'm like, "Listen, man, this is what everybody's going through. It's just that we've all agreed to present this fake facade like we really have our act together, and we don't." So, as a result of my own experiences of actually, ending up sick as a result of this stuff, I did learn a lot of things, and I try to share those things with other people. Now, the trick is this. Took me years and years to learn all these different lessons, and a lot of times I try to share them all in one brief conversation, and it's very difficult. It's difficult for me, and it's even more difficult for the person who's listening. It's just information overload. So, over the years, I've tried to come up with a better way to do it to speed up the conversation. But basically, what I decided, and a couple people have suggested this, was I'd make a couple short videos that people could look at, and it would just offer some ideas that people could think about. It's never going to cost anybody any money. All it's going to cost them is some time. But what it's going to do is give you the opportunity. I feel like the way we live our lives is we kind of go through our lives and we have like no emotional training. Basically, you just struggle through life and you handle things the way that you do, generally by overreacting or freaking out, without ever having sat down and formulated a real plan about how to deal with all the difficult challenges of life. And this is kind of going to offer people the opportunity to just sit down and really think about the way that they handle the situations of their life. Now, I'm going to take the pressure off myself. This is not a professional video. I do not own any editing equipment, so once in a blue moon, I will mess up. Other times I'll hit pause and have to regather myself because I have a tendency to get a little verbal, run my mouth a little bit too much, and I might need to pause and start over again. But in general, I'm going to try to flow through, and there will be a series of videos. And this first one is basically just an introduction. So, if I had to summarize the whole idea in one, I would say this. One of the books that really affected my life is called Always at Ease. And I'll share with you many of the important lessons from that book. But what I realized is that for a large part of my life, I was never at ease in any situation. I was always anxious about how to behave or what to do or what to think or how to be perceived. So the main idea of these videos is going to be trying to help people to learn to live at ease. Because as somebody who has done it the other way first, and now I have some, I've learned some skills to help me. I can't imagine ever going. I would never want to go back to the way I was before. So without any further ado, let's move on. Okay. Uh, Pretty much if you grew up in America, doesn't matter what religion you are, there's some variation on the golden rule that you were taught as a little kid, and that was basically treat others the way you want them to treat you back. And I think we do a pretty good job of that, most of us. We go around, we try not to hurt people's feelings, if we don't have to. We try to be nice, share, be thoughtful, be forgiving, and we do that for other people as best we can. I mean, we're all imperfect, but we do the best job we can. The problem that I find is that I think there needs to be a new golden rule. And this is basically, this is what I always like to joke. If you go to see a psychiatrist, um, the problem with a psychiatrist is they get money for helping you. So they would like to take as long as possible to help you get your life together. Well, I'm coming from the other direction. I would like to help people as quickly as possible. And I will tell you now, the end of all of my psychobabble is this. If people could learn the new golden rule, then their lives would be much better. And what is that? It is treat yourself the way that you try to treat others. Now, what does that mean? I find that most of us try really hard to be nice to other people. We're forgiving, we give them second chances, we try to understand if they're acting nutty. We try to say, well, his dad's a little crazy. That's why he is that way. I'll cut him a break. But what I find is we as a species are pretty horrible to ourselves. We are much less forgiving to ourselves. We are much less understanding about ourselves. The little voice inside our heads, most of us, is pretty evil. It is very harmful. It's not forgiving. It's very judgmental. It's very harsh and critical. And basically, that little voice controls your entire life. I'm going to steal some information from Tony Robbins, but one thing that he talked about is, what do Elvis Presley, John Belushi, and I forget, Freddie Prinze, he names all these famous people, and he says, what do they all have in common? Well, they were super rich, super famous, super everything. They had everything, and they killed themselves. Now, why did they do that? Because in the end, your happiness is determined by that little voice inside your head. It could turn out that you could have, oh, this is the one I used to joke. You could be somebody who's like, say you're George Clooney and you're an amazingly good looking guy, right? Well, if you hang out with Brad Pitt, who might be one of the only people on the earth who's better looking than you could literally start to think to yourself that you're not a very good looking guy. Now, you might be the second best looking man on the entire earth, but if you have messed up ways of thinking, you could literally say every time you go out, man, they always are interested in the other guy. What's wrong with me? And as irrational as that would be, that's kind of what we do to ourselves in a lot of situations. We have these really unfair criteria for ourselves, and basically we're able to beat ourselves up in almost every situation. So the long game from everything that I will say in any of these videos is this. The level of understanding, the niceness, the fairness, the logicalness, I know that's not a word, the way that we try to treat others, if we could learn to treat ourselves in that same way, with that same level of understanding and fairness and caring, then we would be a lot happier than we are. Now, that's very difficult because most of us are not even aware of what we do to ourselves. So what I'm going to do with you is share with you some of the ways that we do that and then how you can change it so that you don't do that anymore. Now, to keep my YouTube videos short, I try to keep them under 10 minutes. There's reasons why I'll explain later. But basically, I'm going to do this as the intro. This will be part one, and then there'll be a part two. I have no idea how many parts there's going to be, but I'll try to break it up into small little increments, and we'll see how it goes. So this is going to be the end of the first part, and if you're able to, in the set of videos, you'll be able to locate the second part. I'll be making that one very shortly.